Welcome to episode 58 of the State of the Market for Law Firm Sales in 11 Minutes. My name is Jeremy Pook and I lead Senior Attorney Match. Today's episode will focus on the devastating impact upon law firm value that a Random Tuesday event presents. We'll discuss two examples of Random Tuesday events plus our buzzer beater. So let's jump right into it with our first example. Our first example of a Random Tuesday event is the unexpected departure of a key employee attorney. So let's first just explain what a Random Tuesday is. It is what it sounds like. That is just on a random Tuesday, a random day that you do not expect something really disastrous to happen, happens. And one example of a Random Tuesday event that we see with senior attorney led firms is when a key employee lawyer, or sometimes even lawyers, walk down the hall to the senior attorney owner or owners of a law firm and present 2 or 4 weeks notice that they're leaving to take another job. That's a Random Tuesday, and it has significant negative impacts on the practice. Really has two negative impacts. In the short term, the impact is on law firm revenues, right? That is, your key employee lawyer is your significant biller in the firm, whether you're an hourly based firm, a flat fee based firm, or a contingency based firm. When a key employee lawyer leaves, your revenues will go down in the short term because that attorney that generates so much work for your practice has now walked out the door only on 2 or 4 weeks notice, and it's very difficult to replace those billable hours. In addition, in the short term, because there's a prohibition against restrictive covenants on lawyers, and there's also client choice requirements when lawyers depart law firms, your key employee lawyer could be leaving the firm with key clients as well as referral sources, which also impacts the revenues of the firm in the short term. There's also a negative impact on two key components of law firm value for those senior attorneys that are contemplating selling their law firms and are hit with a Random Tuesday event with a key employee lawyer who leaves the firm. The negative impact on those two key components of value are as follows. Number one is the most valuable asset of a senior attorney led firm is the book of business. So if your key employee lawyer or lawyers leave with clients, your book of business is worth less. Also, if you have difficulty replacing that key employee lawyer, which many senior attorneys do, it's hard to attract talent in your practice areas generally. It's even harder to attract talent if you're leading a small business law firm and you, as the senior attorney, are not necessarily offering to a new employee lawyer longevity for a job. So if you're not able to quickly or even replace a key employee lawyer who leaves your firm on a Random Tuesday, you may not be able to accept as many new clients because you just don't have the capacity to do so. And if you've lost clients and you're not adding new clients because you have less capacity in your firm, your book of business is going to be worth less. The other key component is that growing law firms, which are the primary purchasers of senior attorney led firms, what do they need and want when they're purchasing a senior attorney led law firm? Yes, of course, they want the book of business, but they also need and want your experienced workforce. They need lawyers to continue doing the sophisticated work that your clients and their clients are going to want. So when a key employee lawyer leaves on a Random Tuesday, those negative impacts long term are the book of business could be worth less, and the practice is worth less because you don't offer key employee lawyers that a growing law firm needs in terms of wanting and needing to add on to their workforce to continue representing the clients of not only the senior attorney led firm that they're purchasing, but their firm as well. So now let's look in terms of whether a Random Tuesday is really that random. That is a Random Tuesday with regard to key employee lawyers, is it really that random? And what we explain to our clients and what we want to share with senior attorneys generally is that if you're considering that your key employee lawyer or lawyers wants to purchase your law firm, please know that there are 4 reasons why those are really false expectations that your key employee lawyers ever want to purchase your practice. And those false expectations are as follows. Your key employee lawyers, you hire them as key employees. They only wanted a job when you hired them. They still only want a job. They do not want to purchase your small business law firm. Also, they went to law school and not business school. They're just typically not entrepreneurial by nature. In addition, they can't afford to purchase your law practice. They have all types of expenses that they're typically telling their boss about because they want to raise every year, right? They've got to pay their mortgage, they've got to pay their student debt, they've got to save for their kids' college debt that's upcoming. They want to purchase a second home. They want to save for their own retirement. To think about affording to purchase their boss's practice is typically just a bridge too far. And they also assume that even if a senior attorney owner of a firm says that the senior attorney wants to sell the firm, they just really assume that their boss is never going to retire. And as a result, even those senior attorneys wish that their key employee lawyers want to purchase their practices. In reality, they don't. Those are false expectations. And when you're hit with a 2 or 4 week notice that they're accepting a job at another firm, it really shouldn't be all that random, even though it can be very devastating in terms of the short-term revenues for your practice and the longer-term value for your practice. Now let's look at the second example. The second example of a Random Tuesday event is, unfortunately, the premature death or incapacity of a senior attorney law firm owner. In terms of a premature death or incapacity of a senior attorney law firm owner, unfortunately, that really has a devastating impact on the value of the law firm from the standpoint of selling the firm. And what we're talking about here is a senior attorney led law firm that's also typically what we call a small business law firm that consists of the senior attorney owner or owners, several additional attorneys, and those internal attorneys. They really don't want to purchase your practice and they can't afford to purchase your practice. And what we call the normal course of business when it comes to selling a law firm, what we see in terms of the monetization of a senior attorney led firm is that senior attorney will typically merge, join, sell to a growing law firm in consideration for the collections derived from the book of business of the senior attorney led firm paid over a number of years. Very, very importantly, what we call literally the flux capacitor of that model that we call law firm sales 1.0 is trust transfer. For the monetization to happen, the trust of the senior attorney's clients needs to be transferred to the attorneys at the firm that the senior attorney joins. So if we could just go back to that last infographic, and what we'll show is that when the trust transfer happens, when senior attorneys themselves are able to transfer the trust of their clients to the attorneys at the firms that they join, they're able to monetize the practice because that monetization is derived from the collections from that book of business. It is incredibly important for a senior attorney to transition the trust of his or her clients to attorneys at the firm that they join. Let's say, unfortunately, that prior to a sale, when a senior attorney owns his or her law practice and they suffer an incapacity, whether that's a physical or mental incapacity, or prematurely pass away, well, as a result, there's no trust transfer. And if there's no trust transfer, the value of the practice just plummets because the clients are not being properly transitioned to another firm. And unfortunately, the estate, which is typically left holding, unfortunately, that proverbial bag to be able to sell or transition the practice without that senior attorney founder available to transfer the trust of the clients, those clients may not stay with a firm that would purchase the practice, or in worst case scenario, and this happens unfortunately, is that the clients just get notice that the senior attorney passed away and they can be referred to multiple other lawyers, law firms, typically friends of the senior attorney who became incapacitated or passed away, and little to no consideration is paid as a result. So now let's look at that law firm sales 1.0. In terms of law firm sales 1.0, when lawyers are able to sell their law practices by transitioning the practice to a growing law firm, that growing law firm will pay on an earn-out basis on the collections derived from the revenues from that book of business. And it's really trust transfer that drives the revenues when those sales happen. So if we just look at that trust transfer in terms of there's three ways that trust transfer happens in law firm sales. It's done in person, it's done via Zoom, and it's also done via social media in terms of constant contact, e-newsletters, LinkedIn posts, other forms of social media that are letting clients of a senior attorney know that senior attorney has joined another firm and that the clients can trust the attorneys, trust the law firm that the senior attorney has joined. And again, those revenues that come in, senior attorney is paid a percentage of those revenues based upon transferring the trust in person via Zoom and via social media. But in the event of a random Tuesday and that senior attorney has not sold his or her practice and does not benefit by trust transfer, the benefit of realizing the earnout type terms from the revenues from that book of business, unfortunately, is typically not available, and the law firm value plummets, and the realization of the value of the practice does not inure to the family of that senior attorney. So for today's buzzer beater, random Tuesday events have a devastating impact upon law firm value. There's two examples of random Tuesday events. Example number one is when a key employee lawyer provides only 2 or 4 weeks notice that they're taking a job at another firm. That has both short-term revenue impacts and long-term value impacts on a senior attorney-led firm. In terms of the short-term impact, revenues go down because the key employee lawyer who has left is no longer billing upon the clients, hence revenues go down. Also in the short term, key employee lawyer could very well take with him or her clients and referral sources. Longer term, a key employee lawyer leaves a senior attorney-led firm, and that impacts negatively upon the following two key components of value for a senior attorney-led firm: the client list, which is the utmost value, and if the key employee lawyer is leaving with clients, hence that book of business is going to be worth less. Also, growing law firms, they need the talented workforce of senior attorney-led firms. And if a key employee lawyer leaves the practice, even if the senior attorney-led firm has a book of business, if you don't present to a growing law firm lawyers to continue representing those clients, growing law firms could very well say, we just don't have the capacity to continue representing those clients without the legal talent that they would want the senior attorney and senior attorney-led firm to bring with them to the growing law firms that they join. The second random Tuesday event is in the event that a senior attorney law firm owner prematurely dies or becomes incapacitated. In that event, the senior attorney is not available to perform what we call the flux capacitor of law firm sales 1.0, which is trust transfer. Law firm sales 1.0, which is what we see as the primary vehicle for law firm sales of small business law firms, what it requires is for senior attorneys to transfer the trust of their clients to the lawyers and law firms that they join. If a senior attorney is not available to do that because the senior attorney had not already sold their practice to a growing law firm or internally made arrangements for the firm to succeed to that senior attorney's book of business without being available to transfer the trust of those clients, then the practice value just plummets, because the major value of law firm sales 1.0 is a collection of a percentage of fees derived from a senior attorney's book of business. And if that senior attorney is not available to transfer the trust of his or her clients as a result of a premature death or, God forbid, an incapacity type event, the value of that practice just unfortunately goes unrealized. And that is the state of the market for law firm sales. And we recognize a lot more than 11 minutes today.